Thank you for tuning into this episode of Walden Wong Art. Today, we're going to be doing a drawing technique or an inking technique called hatch lines. But before we do that, let me tell you a little bit about me. My name is Walden Wong, comic book artist from Marvel in DC. You can check out some of my work on my website, is waldenwongart.com. Over there, there's different links and social media that you can look at. So check that out. And if you enjoy these videos, think about supporting me over on Patreon. My Patreon is patreon.com/waldenwongart. And over there, there's different tiers that you can look at, and also a mentorship tier. So if you want me to look at your work, think about looking at my Patreon page there. So without further ado, let's take a look at an art technique, a drawing technique called hatch lines. Here we go. Okay, this next lesson is about hatching and why we approach hatching. Hatching, I'm going to use a Pigma liner here, a fine liner. Hatching is a series of lines, for example, like here, is a series of lines that creates a gray area in your art. Unlike penciling, when you're drawing in pencil and you're shading, for example, if you're drawing in pencil and you want an area to be dark, you can go in there and make it dark. But if you want a light area, some artists would just ease up on the pencil and then draw lightly. Okay, some of them even will use a smudger and kind of soften that up. But with comic book art, majority of everything is either black and white. And because it's black and white, you want to go in there and add hatching details. I'm going to use this pen right over here. I'm going to use this one. So you see how this is going from, in pencil, how it's going from dark to medium value to a light value. I'm going to create that with a marker. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll ink in lines and I'll space them as evenly as I can. Okay, so that's hatching. The next thing is you're going back there and you're cross hatching. So when you're cross hatching, you're creating a darker value like that. Okay, now I'm going a step further. I'm going to triple cross hatch like that. So now right here, you can see how this area is darker and you go into a lighter area. Okay, so this is done with a Pigma liner. I'm going to demonstrate how to do hatching with a brush. So this is a brush. Okay, so when I hatch with a brush, same technique. I'll just start thin and then I'll just ink in those lines like that. Now, when you're hatching, you want those lines to space evenly. Like you want each of those lines to space evenly as best as you can. Okay, you want to have those lines to start in the right place and then end in the right place. You want that line to kind of end in a pattern like this. You're going to go in here and hatch like this. Okay, so when you cross hatch, all you do is just you tilt the paper and you go in here and you cross hatch. Now the technique with cross hatching, I'm going to go in here and darken up this area like that. And then I'm going to double cross hatch going from this area to here. So I'll start light. And as I go into a dark area, I'll press down a little bit harder. Like that. Okay. Now we have a light area, a medium value, and a dark value. Okay. Another thing with hatching is you can always go in there and do different spacing. Okay. So for example, instead of hatching lines that are just parallel across from each other like that and then going in here and then making it darker, what some artists like to do is they'll space their hatching, which they'll start really thin and then as they get into the black area, B-L-A-C-K, black over here, and this is the light, okay, they'll go closer and then that line will get thicker gradually. See that the spacing is getting closer and then that line is getting thicker as you go into the black area. Okay, here's one hatching technique like this. Now I'm using a micron and you see me going back and forth to create that texture. If you had a brush, that is quickly done faster. So I'm going to demonstrate over here. I'm going to go thin. And then as I go into a dark area, I'll go closer and I'll press down a little bit harder. So I'm also thinking about the negative space. Negative space is you're not just looking at the black line, you're also looking at the white line in between. You're looking at the spacing of the white line. Okay, I'm going to grab some more ink so I can continue. So right here, I'm using a Speedball Super Black, and I'm also using a Pentel Pocket Brush. Okay, I'm gonna dip this, and every time I start inking, I always want to go in there and make sure I have a nice sharp tip. Now hatching, not only when I hatch, hatching isn't just one direction. You can go as many directions as you want. You can go straight. You can hatch those lines straight like this. You can curve those hatch lines like this. Okay, so when I'm hatching, for example, if I'm hatching details on this shirt, I follow the direction of the clothing. So right here, I'm just gonna make sure my brush is working. I'm pressing here, and I'm hatching underneath his elbow. Notice how I'm spacing it as evenly as I can. Okay, not only am I spacing it evenly, I'm starting that point in the same area. So that means when you're hatching, for example, you don't want to just randomly hatch lines like that. That's messy. You want to be clean and neat when you're hatching. Okay, I'm going to add some hatching on the side of his jacket over here, right here. Watch how I start the lines. I start thin, and then I space them evenly. If I want it to gradually become dark, I press down harder. Okay. With hatching, what you want to accomplish is a gray area, just like the pencil that goes from really dark grays to a medium value to a light value. So if I was creating this, I would just press in, go thin, press in like this. Okay. You're creating a gradation that comic books can print. Okay. Like a light area to a dark area. Okay. If you want to cross hatch, you just tilt the paper, do the same effect, and just go back in there and just press down like this. Okay, like that. Okay, so that's one way to cross hatch. Another way of cross hatching is spacing the lines. Okay, so we have here, like that. You turn it. Okay, leave some of these lines. Actually, let me space a little bit more. I'm going to hatch a little bit more. Leave some of that line, and then start cross hatching somewhere here. So we're going to go like this. Okay, so now you have a series of lines which you can see that there's a pattern going on. So you have this here, that's only one line. Here you have double line, and then now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to do 3 times cross hatching, which is the same technique, but I'm only going as far as this. So now you have a light value, medium value, and a darker value. If I want this value to be darker, I go in there, I adjust it, and now I'll start inking another direction. Okay, hatching, you can hatch as many times as you want, as long as you have a gradation. Okay, sometimes I'll go in there and I'll even break up that hatch line. What I'll use is a gel pen. For example, this is a white pen that you can ink with white lines. I go in there and I'll start breaking up these lines. So some of these lines, I'll just go in here and I'll cross hatch some of those lines. So you have these white lines going through the black ink like this. Okay, so when it's printed, you won't see that whole line going across. It may be hard to see it in the video, but right here, when it's scanned, it'll look like little broken lines like this, like that. Okay, so that's cross-hatching. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate cross-hatching with a crow quill. This is a crow quill right over here. This is a Hunt's 102 nib. And when I'm inking, let me grab my bottle of ink. I'll just dip this right in here. Now with a crow quill, it's different than using a brush or a micron. With a crow quill, you can only ink one direction, which is the concave side facing upwards, okay? Which is the round side facing upwards. So this side is the bottom of the quill, and this side is the top of the quill. You can only go in one direction. So when I'm cross-hatching with a quill, you flick it. Instead of using a pen and you're just drawing the lines, what you're doing with a quill is you're flicking it. So right over here, make sure my quill works. And I'm just gonna flick, like that. You can hatch those lines as long as you want. Space them evenly, or you can hatch them as close as you want. Okay, but a lot of flicking motion. Okay, you want to press down on it and then flick. And you do hear that sound, that clicking sound. So that's me cross hatching right over here. Now I'm going to cross hatch. That was me hatching here. I'm going to cross hatch, same thing. You're just going to go in there and do this flicking motion. Okay. One thing you want to keep an eye on is make sure those little squares inside is a pattern. You want those to have a nice pattern on your crosshatch lines. Okay. Now I'm going to go in here and hatch a few more lines. With a quill, ever so often you're going to have to dip it. So just dip it in your bottle of ink. And then we're going to do some hatching around this cuff over here. So 2 ways you can hatch. You can go from thick to thin, which I'm going to demonstrate now. Thick to thin. Let me get this started. Thick to thin, like this. That's one way. And once you get used to using a brush, you should be able to go from thin to thick. So thick to thin is flicking out this way. And then thin to thick is you're pressing down this way. So you start off with a thin line. So right here, thin to thick. This way, you have full control of your tools that you're using. You're not limited to only going one direction. You can go this direction, and you can also go this direction. It's a little skill that it takes a little bit of time to practice, but once you're practicing, it's just going to speed up your process of your work. Okay, I'm going to do some hatching over here, and then I'm going to do some cross hatching in between here. So you'll see the difference between this area and that area. So right here, I'm going to hatch with a crow quill. Like so. And then here I'm going to cross hatch because I want more depth into the side of his jacket right here. So I'll hatch this. And again, what you want to do with hatching is you want to space them as evenly as you can. Okay, you want to let that dry for a little bit because nothing worse than when you're using a crow quill and you hatch this line, all of a sudden you hatch this line, it drags some of that ink over to the other side and you create a blob. Grab some more ink with a crow quill. You have to constantly keep dipping. Unlike a micron or a brush, you just need to constantly dip. Okay, now earlier I demonstrated how I was flicking from thick to thin, going this way. Now I'm going to cross hatch, going from thin to thick. Okay, so right over here. And again, space them evenly, and it's controlling your tools. Remember, it's not the tools that creates the artist. It's the artist that creates. It's not the tools that create the art. It's the artist that uses the tool that creates the art. Okay, so right here, I'm going to go in here. See, now this pushes it back, and it has a nice pattern. Here, I'm going to do a little bit of cross-hatching here. Now, I'm going to demonstrate how to hatch going from left to right. Okay, from here, left to right, like that. I'm right-handed, so I go left to right. Okay. Most of the artists you're born writing from left to right, it's just easier going from left to right. There's some artists who will go up to down, they'll ink this way, and it's really what you're comfortable with. There's really no wrong way of inking as long as you're comfortable with whatever direction you want to go. So I'm going from thin to thick, right over here, thin to thick. Or I can also go thick to thin. Okay, I ran out of ink again. I gotta get some more ink, and this is something that's just normal. When you're using a quill, make sure you do not press down too hard. Some of the new artists here, thick to thin, like this. Some of the new artists, when they press too down, that tip, the two little tip over there, it will break. Like these two little tips there. If you press down, what's happening is flexing open. Let me go in closer so you can see better. Like when you press down, it's opening the tip. Now, if you press down too hard, that tip can break. Okay, so control how hard you press. This is as far as you want to go. You don't want to go further than that. Any further, you're just gonna break the tip. Sometimes there could be some danger where the tip can flick into your eye, or some of the ink will go into your eye. Okay, and that's my lesson on how to ink and with hatching. So some of the shadow here, if I want to add more depth to this, I'll just go in there and I'll add some hatch lines here, and I'll space them further apart as I'm going out. And then if I want this area to be a little bit thick, darker, I just cross hatch here, and now I'll fade out like this. Okay, and that's hatching. And then some of the lines, you're just flicking it with a crow quill. Okay, and that's the lesson on hatching right over here. The different values of hatching, the way to use a brush to hatch, how to use a micron to hatch, as well as how to use a crow quill to hatch. Each of them provides a different way of hatching, is what you're comfortable with, and which one is more effective for you. There you have it. That is my lesson for inking and drawing hatch lines and cross hatch lines. So if you enjoyed this video, please think about supporting me over my Patreon page. It's patreon.com/WaldenWongArt, and over there there's different tiers that you can look at. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and like as well. And check out my website is WaldenWongArt.com. Over there there's different things and art and galleries and a lot of stuff that you can learn about me and my work for publishers such as Marvel Comics and DC Comics. So keep on drawing. The more you draw, the better you get. Take care and have a good day. Bye-bye.